So I guess the thing is, it's very easy to understand why I have an interest in cybersecurity and do a good job of protecting it for myself and my family. But Catherine, you have a really interesting story from a patient perspective, right?
Yeah, so I have always been careful, right? I don't click on those links that I get in my text or my email, and I, try and do the right thing. I know that much. But, I've had to really learn, given the new landscape, it's 2019, we're going to 2020, and I'm learning the questions I need to ask my healthcare practices.
Yeah, I find it really interesting how sort of well entrenched you are with this type of knowledge, and that you would even take an interest when I notice that so many people just seem to park their trust with healthcare providers and even businesses.
Well, it's so easy because they're the experts, right? Except that they're the experts at, putting on braces, or they're the experts at diagnosing my wart, or they're the experts
Okay, well,
at telling me I'm blind. But
I
they're
don't know
not.
if you have a wart, but
They're not, well, not anymore.
yeah.
But they're
Okay.
they're not the experts at understanding the technical side. And to be honest, neither am I. And that's why it was such a challenge.
Yeah, I see it all the time, and what seems to be interesting is that my own experience, because we're all patients somewhere, we go in and they start shoving all these forms at us, and we sign off for them, and I think that also gives us sort of a sense that maybe something good is happening when it comes to privacy. But what happened to you?
Not so yeah. So like I went a little bit further. I mean, I'm very lucky in so many ways that I have you as my friend. But one of them is that you are a cybersecurity expert. So to tell anyone listening, what happened was my daughter needs braces. She begged for them, in fact. But we went to the dentist. We went to the orthodontist, and when we got to the orthodontist's office, they're high tech. Like my dentist is actually super low tech, which is why I like them. But these guys were super high tech, and they had me sign a form, and so I took a photograph with my phone of the front and the back of the page, and it listed, and I read it later, right? Because I read it at the time, but I needed to digest it, and so I read it again later, and it had like the two partners as the privacy officers.
Oh, that's interesting. So did you? Okay, I'll let you tell your story.
Yeah, so I asked the receptionist. I'm like, so like I think I'm seeing this doctor, and that's the case, right? Because I want to ask her some questions, and they didn't know what I was talking about when it came to like data privacy with my daughter's healthcare records. And so I did actually start out the conversation with the doctor. My daughter was rolling her eyes like mad, but when I saw her name on this form as the privacy officer, I expected her to be able to answer these questions.
Well, that's and legally they're supposed to, but I've noticed that in a number of cases, even when I start to try to train people on this, they don't. Even though these laws have been around to protect us, for example, in Ontario, it's PHIPAA, the Personal Health Information Protection Act, has been in place since 2004. But still, there's a lot of smaller healthcare type practices that only go as far as naming the privacy officer, and then whatever happens after. But you're an educated person, so what happened next?
I am now. So here's the thing. I went in knowing the questions I should ask, but not really sure necessarily the solutions or the answers, because it was a few months ago and I know more now. But at the time, what I did, I asked her, okay, so how do you store my records? And she's like, oh, it's all stored on the computer, super safe. And I said, okay, so like what, you say they're safe, so what measures do you have in place? Oh, well, we have antivirus. And I'm like, okay, but antivirus is only good for the stuff, and this is what I knew at the time, antivirus is only good for the stuff that's already in your system. But what about the stuff you don't know about? And she's like, well, my partner takes care of all of that.
Okay.
So, I said, okay, do you know, like, is your staff trained on cybersecurity measures? And she said, well, no. And to me, that's one of the biggest features, because they're the ones scanning the documents, they're the ones sending the emails, they're the ones, but I didn't know how to say to her, like, that makes me really nervous that your people don't know what to do with my information.
It's a pretty common thing that we see, is that it's and as a person working in cyber in the smaller healthcare segment, this is often what we see, is that in some cases we don't even get proper security on the systems, but training is a definite gap. Sometimes we'll put it in place, but people don't do it. But certainly now we're getting more consumer awareness around it, and you would hope that when you're giving them some of the most sensitive information about yourself, And because even in a dental office, of course, I'm sure you saw that on the health history, there's probably a spot for you to put your daughter's medications, any kind of treatments, surgeries. And so it's
like all of her diagnoses, and like there's my information's on there, my ex-husband's information's on there, so like they have everything now.
You see, and that's exactly, you just said something really important there, because when you talk about identity theft, especially at these dental practices, and which are kind of the arena I know the best, but they really contain all of the necessary details for identity theft. So you've uncovered something really important here, because now it actually they had all those other pieces, including your daughter's well, I don't know,
birthday,
everything,
addresses, everything. And I think it was just her. She tried to just brush me off. She tried to tell me that it wasn't important, and she wasn't listening to me, right? Like, I was obviously concerned, and she didn't have the answers, and her only answer is, well, email my partner and see if he knows the answers for you. And that really sat poorly with me. So guess what? I am not going back to that orthodontist. I am sorry. I was lucky because I could call you and say, hey, are they covered? And you could tell me, like, no, they don't have, I mean, I know Alexio covers dentists, and there's not a lot of other options out there for smaller dentists, so if she doesn't have Alexio, then what on earth would she have? Right.
Well, I mean, certainly that's true. But I think what is more disappointing is the way that these questions are being handled. And people come to me with both privacy and security things, and they're not the same. But you uncovered a couple things, right? Was that you weren't feeling confident about the way your daughter's electronic data was going to be protected. But there's a privacy aspect, and that has to do with people and policies and procedures which you didn't feel confident they had, obviously. If it had been handled differently, perhaps you might have. But here's the thing, too. You have a million choices.
Yeah.
Especially living in the city.
Right.
And your choice when faced with not being presented with a solid answer around that was easy. You could just go to the next guy. And that's sort of a sad thing for a very competitive industry like dentistry, where people do have a lot of choices.
That's a good point, actually. Just because your dentist has referred you doesn't mean you have to go to that place. You can actually get a referral somewhere else.
Yeah, I wonder how often people would think about this, though, and ask these questions. I mean, probably more and more. Probably as you're watching the media. Is that what happened for you also? Is that you kind of was watching these healthcare breaches in the media, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of, I mean, I love your socials posts. Like, your Instagram feed is just like hysterical. So a lot of it,
thank you.
A lot of it comes from there. Like, I just love watching your Cyber Annie talking. I've learned so much just by paying attention. Like, it's just paying. You don't have to even go out and cram all the info. But if you just pay attention, the info's out there for you to read.
Well, I think that the thing is, nowadays everybody has a computer, so and I appreciate that you're actually seeing the content and learning stuff from it, because my mission really is to help arm everyone better. I always get kind of freaked out, because I realize that no matter what I do to protect my own information is only as safe as the weakest person out there that has it, right? So the weakest link, right?
So then let me ask you, if I'm Kathy the consumer.
Okay.
What questions should I ask my doctor when I go back for my follow-up to make sure that my healthcare data is protected?
They should be able to easily explain to you and have you satisfied that their people are trained on the proper use of your information, not just in the computers, but there's paper, there's conversation. All these elements are really core to privacy. Is that they have a good understanding of what should or shouldn't be said or sent and how to send it. I mean, email, that's a huge thing. I still see way too much.
Actually, let me tell you, I told them they're not allowed to email my data anywhere. So they had to actually send me a paper copy.
Yes.
Of my quote, and they're not allowed to send anything by email to the dentist. So they're going to have to send him the reports by snail mail. But you know what? That's okay because that's safe, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly much
Safer.
safer. I mean, I think the thing is about, and this is why when I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said, well, my therapist writes everything on paper and just keeps it on paper, and I'm like, I kind of like that actually, because at least that conversation is limited to paper. Someone will have to go to an extraordinary effort to copy it and reproduce it in a digital and disseminate it that way. However, in an electronic health record, all of those notes are in there. And when these cyber bad guys steal that data, they post everything on the dark web. They don't have somebody that they pay to siphon out. Oh well, we don't want Mary's depressive thoughts on here, just or blood type or HIV status. They don't siphon that out. They put it out there because you know why? That's actually another tactic now. Is to show someone that you have all of the most embarrassing things about them and say, pay this money or I'll release it. God. So when you hear about these healthcare breaches, and what you see now is over 1 billion health records for sale on the dark web.
There's 1 billion?
1 billion, yeah. Now,
wait, that's
globally.
like 1 in 7. That's like, there's 7 billion people in the world, right?
That's true.
1 in 7.
That's true, yes.
Oh my God.
Now, there could be some people that have been involved in a couple of breaches, so their data could be uploaded there twice. That's true. But you know what? One is too many.
God.
Because tell me, how would you feel? And I mean, you don't have to tell me what's in your records. I know what's in my records. I don't want that out there.
Well, actually, let me tell you, I actually checked with my psychiatrist, and she writes, and she does not put anything. And so I'm like, thank goodness.
Well, I mean, I know that I got denied insurance because I had a neck injury. So, and now insurance, they've asked for consent to access my record, and they've made a decision not to give me, not critical illness, what's the other one? Disability insurance. At this time, 15 years ago, they decided to deny. But I had a choice. The differentiator here is that I had a choice. And what you are telling me is that where you were going to give some of your daughter's information, you did not feel satisfied that that information was going to be safeguarded and only allowed out when you gave consent. That's the thing. We should have a choice. We choose what we put out there. And if we choose what's out there, we can live with the repercussions. But I wonder what your future would look like, or let's think about our kids.
Daughter. I mean, I'm going, turning over the hill kind of thing. But I have more years behind me than I do ahead of me, maybe. But my daughter's just starting out. Like, she's a teenager, and imagine if sensitive data about her got out there, and it's only 2020. In 2080, she's gonna be But what's gonna happen between now and then? What?
Yeah.
The technological advances that we're seeing on a monthly basis, especially in the startup industry and the tech industry. So what's going to happen? And we need to start paying attention now, I feel.
Catherine, you were involved in hiring people in the past, right? Is that
yeah.
So I'm wondering, as a person, potentially as a hiring agent, you're going to want to access tools that tell you everything about somebody. So if what would that look like for you as a hiring agent? You could choose somebody who seems to have an illustrious past versus somebody who's had a broken neck, is bipolar, and
but that's true. Actually, large companies do. I mean, they do searches through social media and others, right? And they don't take people who are quote unquote prone to disability, because they don't want to have to deal with that. They don't want that in their books. They're all.
Yes,
I've worked in jobs where
they
if they have any inkling that you're prone to disease or illness, or you have mental health issues,
time off.
They don't. Yes, because they're paying disability. Then they have part of their. And they don't want that. So of course they're not going to be a stamp of approval, and it's that could be her future. I don't want her future to be a series of trying to remediate the fact that everyone knows that she's blah 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 blah, whatever it is, right?
Right. Well, and the thing is that generally these kids are also being taught to be careful about what they put out there, and again that circles back to this issue of choice, and certainly the evidence is there that healthcare is not doing a good job of protecting this, because it's, why would we have all these breaches then?
Yeah.
But I really, your story is really important.
Yeah, I think consumers should be a little more savvy about it. I think that, like we do our due diligence when it comes to, all kinds of things. Is it the best price? Does it have the best reviews? Does it have, does it give me all the benefits that I'm looking for? But you know what? You need to also, I think nowadays, we need to look at like, how secure is this? Whether it's software or, physical like locations, but like I can't count the number of times I've said no to people saying, "Oh, let me just get your email and I'll maybe you'll win a prize," because where does that end up? And then who knows? But this is a really clear-cut situation. This is some of the most private information that they want to keep on file without paying attention to how it's being stored. No.
Wow, that is so great. It's so wonderful to hear it from a patient's perspective, and it really helps me understand the work that I have to do in furthering people's understanding of this.
Yeah.
And in this case, this was a complete competitive disadvantage
It was.
for this orthodontist,
They
right?
lost my business.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, it was actually that was a deciding factor of whether or not they got your $6,000, I guess. So
It's a little more than that, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I hope other people listen through and start asking the same kinds of questions and being as aware as you obviously are, and good on you for catching all of that.
Own your data, people. It's yours. Don't let it be taken advantage of. That's the last word.
All right, everybody, stay safe out there.